mentioned is that the senators are going to have at a minimum 3 times the number of bills, and I know by the time we go into session, I'm probably going to have over 100 bills. But I'm going to talk about 3 themes that I'm looking at doing something about. We've talked a lot about COVID already, but it should not be forgotten that there's another pandemic that we have both in our community and in our country, and that is the opiate problem. And that problem is even bigger, or it's expanding faster than the COVID issue. We went in Tennessee. We went from 1,800 deaths in 2019, and in 2020 we had over 3,000 deaths. That's a 46% increase, and it's the same thing in the United States nationwide. We hit just under 100,000 deaths from the opiates. And if you look across the spectrum of a lot of what we've talked about today, whether it's teenage suicide, a lot of that's related to drugs. If we look at the problems with the stressed out Department of Children's Services, it's related to drugs. If we, it just permeates everything in the state. I have one bill that will allow testing for fentanyl. And most of those deaths, by the way, aren't necessarily due to increased usage. It's due to contamination of drugs, and these are all drugs. It's not just heroin that's contaminated with fentanyl. Fentanyl is 50 to 100 times more powerful even than heroin is. But it's in, they've got it in methamphetamines, it's in these fake oxycodone pills, it's in the fake OxyContin pills, it's in meth, it's everywhere. But there's a test strip that's very inexpensive to use. It's done a lot like the strip for COVID, where you can take just a grain or 2 of the drug and put that in a tablespoon of water and dip your strip in there and see if it's contaminated or not. That's one bill I have. Last year, I passed a bill that allowed these federally qualified medical centers like Cherokee to expand the rehabilitation services for people that are addicted to the opiates by using what we call the medically assisted treatment. That's the Suboxone and some of those drugs, because those have been very tightly controlled by the federal government on the number of patients that each healthcare provider can take care of. And then also we have these outpatient treatment centers, and a law that we passed last year that was part of that same bill expands their ability, and I think we need to do that again, and I have several bills out there that are dealing with the opiate crisis. The second theme of what I'm looking at deals with voting. One thing, I'm not going to slam my hand down, I just about did, but one thing that I'm absolutely dedicated to is that we have fair voting in Tennessee. We have avoided a lot of the criticisms that you've heard in other states, and there was a conference in Washington in December, and this was a nonpartisan conference, and they were recommending that other states use the Tennessee model. Now, we are going to have bills among some of our members and colleagues that are wanting to change things, and probably the biggest, by the way, I'm the chairman of the State and Local Government Committee, and we're the busiest. We have more bills than any committee in the state legislature that we see. But one of the things that my committee members, and I think we have a very, very good committee, there's 9 of us on it, including myself, is that I'm dedicated to try to defeat these bills that do anything that would inhibit the people's ability to vote, to inhibit registering to vote. We did pass one good bill last year that I think added to voter confidence, and that's where we're putting a watermark on the absentee ballots that are sent. It makes it much more difficult, if not impossible, to have counterfeit ballots. We're doing this very slowly in the state, and I've carried all of these bills. It's where we have voting centers, which I think will make voting easier for everyone, just like it.
Convenience centers.
Yeah, they call them voting centers, voting convenience centers. But what you do is, just like in early voting, you can go to any open poll and vote regardless if that's in your precinct or not. On election day, this would allow you to go any poll in the county that's open where you could vote, rather than having to go to your home precinct to vote, which could cause difficulties for a lot of people. So that's very important to me, is that we have integrity in the voting in Tennessee, and we make it easy to register and vote, and we want every vote to count. The third area is a little bit less sexy, so to speak, and what that has to do, and I'm working very closely with Representative Wright on this, matter of fact, I think we may talk just as soon as this meeting is over, is trying to return more money to the local governments. For instance, there's a 1.25 fee on all the sales tax that the state, that the local governments, local businesses send to the state that comes back as a local option tax. Representative Wright and I have a bill that would cut that in half. And there's two other taxes that the state is keeping money that historically in the past would be returned to the local governments. I won't go through the details of all those, but we've got 3 bills that we're looking at, and altogether that would have around $200 million of additional funds that would come locally. I think that's important for our local citizens to know, because returning money like that can also help the local governments pay for things without having to increase property taxes. They can put it into the schools, they can do other things with that money rather than having to raise taxes on the local citizens. And those are really the 3 main themes of what I'm looking to do, and I have several bills in all of those broad areas.
Well, I know KnoxCo